Hey everyone, so in this video I wanted to take a look at some of the limitations with mircroStudio. I already did a separate video where I introduced mircroStudio and I talked about what I saw as some of the positives, but to be fair, I want to talk about what I perceive as some of the limitations. You certainly don't have to take my word for it. mircroStudio is free. You can go to their website right now and just download it for yourself and give it a try and see what you think for yourself. I think it's mircrostudio.dev. So you can just download it and have at it. You don't need to watch this video. Anyways, so any criticism that I have of mircroStudio, it's not meant to be a criticism of the developers. I'm not looking to criticize the person or people behind this project. I'm not looking to question their skill, their talent, their determination. I'm simply looking at mircroStudio in its current state and give you an evaluation in my opinion. Having said that, the current state is going to keep changing. To the best of my knowledge, the developers are still working on this. I received an email from the main dev this morning, and he talked about some of the things that he's looking to do with this. So it is still actively developed, which means 6 months from now, a year from now, this video might not even be applicable because maybe there's been a lot of momentum and the community contributed a lot and it's very different. But in its current state is what I'm going to review. So first of all, it is 2D only. Now, if you're looking to do, say, top-down gaming, or you're looking to do side-scrolling, multi-directional scrolling, or even the kind of pseudo 3D racing that you could do on 16-bit games, or games like Space Harrier, where it used like super scaling to make it look like you're in a 3D environment, then mircroStudio would probably meet your needs. Having said that, the problem with using a 2D only engine is if you decide to transition to 3D, you have to start from scratch. You have to learn a whole new UI. You have to relearn at least part of the workflow. And that's the thing. So other environments like such as Unity, it does 2D and 3D. I originally learned 2D in Unity and then I switched to 3D. The coding was very similar. The environment was the same UI. So that's the limitation as far as a 2D only environment. If you decide to go to 3D, you have to start from scratch. Second of all, there doesn't seem to be any kind of modern collision detection or physics. Really big asterisk next to that, which I'll get to in a minute. But right now, for collision detection, it's extremely old school. You're checking X, Y coordinates. You don't seem to have anything similar to box colliders or mesh colliders. And that's a big one because with a mesh collider in Unity, you can do basically pixel perfect collision detection. You can't do that in mircroStudio. What you're doing is you're looking for the XY coordinate, and it's using the center of the object. So the center XY coordinate versus the center of another the center coordinates of another object, okay? And saying if they're close enough, then a collision has occurred. So one of the problems is that objects are not symmetrical necessarily. So depending on which direction they're coming from, you're using coordinates that don't make any sense. So that's a serious problem in my opinion, that since you don't have the actual mesh colliders or box colliders or cylinder colliders, that you cannot get that kind of pixel perfect collision detection, that you're basing it purely on distance. Physics, there doesn't seem to be any built-in physics. So as far as gravity, the ability to apply velocity or force or weight or anything like that, it seems to be all manually driven. So the asterisk next to this is the fact that about half a year ago, a little bit more, they released an experimental build that uses, I believe it's JavaScript for some of these things. So there is technically a more modern physics systems, but it's the experimental build. So you really don't want to be building a commercial product on something like experimental, because what if they don't follow through? What if there are things that break it? So that's the problem, is that yes, there may be a solution out there, but it's experimental. It's not part of the final build. And so it's kind of buyer beware that you might be using something that isn't supported going forward. So that to me is a big advisory, that until that becomes part of mircroStudio in its basic form, I'd be very, very hesitant to want to use that. So yeah, so really big asterisk next to physics and collision detection. Also, as far as visual effects like bloom post-processing, the built-in does not have any. You would need to, again, use some kind of external library for that. So this is a common theme that you're hearing. To get this to where you'd probably want it to be, you're using all these external sources, and you only want to do just so much of that. Yes, you could compare that to Unity or Unreal and say, hey, there's all kinds of things you can buy from the store. Having said that, a lot of things that I'm talking about are already built into those engines. So the fact that you need to get external stuff just to get to the basics, I think is of a big concern. So yeah, so Bloom, Glow, post processing not built in. You basically have to use some external solution. Same thing for a particle system. No built-in particle system. Again, you would have to use in an external solution. And so every time you have to try to find a fix, that's a reason just to use a different engine. And then the final thing is this is very code heavy. So sorry to keep comparing it to Unity. That's what most of my experience is in. But with Unity, you have the UI, we have the inspector, and you can do fairly substantial things with the inspector as far as like a default rotation and the ability to have like scaling and just a lot of things that you can set in the UI, whereas with MicroStudio, it's yet another script. So yes, you absolutely do coding in Unity, but with MicroStudio, it's almost all coding. So all functionality is being handled through code. There isn't any kind of GUI that I'm aware of that lets you do a shortcut for any of these things. So that for me, that basically puts it firmly into the toy box. So this is definitely more of, and again, that's not meant to demean their efforts. I'm just saying that right now in its current state, I find this as more of kind of an introductory environment, more of maybe learning, um, as opposed to an actual environment you'd want to predicate a commercial build upon. Again, just my opinion. You may decide differently. You can go to the website right now and download it if you want. So, in my opinion, it definitely is firmly in the toy box rather than the toolbox until they get the absolute minimum raised up and we get things like built-in physics, built-in collision detection, maybe even a GUI to handle some of these things so it isn't so code heavy. Okay, so that should about do it. Now, if you do want to see more tutorials, let me know. I'm more than happy to do them because even if I don't believe this is the way to go, I'm more than happy to support someone who has an opinion different than mine. So if you say, hey, can you do a tutorial for such and such? I'll give it a shot. For what it's worth, the built-in tutorials are really good. And then there's these more advanced tutorials down here. I believe these basically link out to YouTube videos. So anything you need is probably already here. So I certainly wouldn't want to waste your time. You might already have what you need. But yeah, if you want me to do a tutorial, just let me know because again, I'm willing to support people even if they have an opinion different than mine. So that should about do it. I hope you found this interesting. I hope this has helped you make a decision. And then please do enjoy the rest of your day.